In today's episode, we're going to talk about how triggers, whether they be location-based, time-based triggers, emotional triggers, whatever they are, how they can be used specifically to actually begin every single part of your ritual design, every routine that you have, whether it be morning routine or night routine. What are the triggers in place that makes you decide when you have that choice in front of you, whether or not I'm going to stay on this couch and keep watching Netflix, or I'm actually going to get up and take action? Check it out. Welcome back to another episode of the Upgrade My Rituals podcast. My name is Kevin McKella, the host, and this is the show for stressed out, high-performing overachievers who are looking to design the ideal day. So instead of trying to hassle with all these different ambitions and goals and healthy habits that you want to instill, we take a look at your schedule. What is the 24 hours look in front of you, and how do we design the perfect, ideal 24 hours, right? What can we do that moves the needle in all facets of your life? And that's done through a system called ritual design. And today we're going to be talking about how triggers, what we've been talking about the last couple of episodes, how they can be used specifically at the precipice, this the moment that we have to actually take action to start each routine, because sometimes that is the hardest. If you are new to this channel, consider subscribing and hitting the bell notification to be notified of every new episode. And if you are a returning visitor, thank you for being here. So as I was developing ritual design and really formulating it into an actual real system, a solid, part A, part B, part C system, I was deciding how granular I wanted to get. And I stopped getting granular at the point of the routine, right? So if you're familiar with ritual design, you know that the fundamental the four routines that make up our day: actuator, clog, keystone, and variable, right? Now, we can go deeper and say, okay, what is inside the routines? Well, they're action items, or whatever you want to call them, segments. It doesn't really matter. At that point, I kind of said to myself, all right, it doesn't matter what we call them. They're just things that we do in our routine. Action items, fine. That there was something that I didn't get too granular, and it is something to flush out a little bit. And that's kind of why triggers, what we've been talking about the last couple of episodes, can help us with this, what this thing is called. And I like to call it a gateway action item. So what this means is simply the very first part of every routine. So if you look at your morning routine, if the very first thing you do is read for 10 minutes, that is your gateway action item. But ultimately, there's things that become before you sit down with a book, right? You don't hop out of bed and immediately just take the book and start reading, right? There's a couple things. You got to go pee. You got to go let the dog out. You got to go, fill up a glass of water. You got to brew the coffee, or whatever you got to do. For me, it's pretty much that's all the things I have to do, right? But there's triggers behind that trigger me to begin my gateway action item, or my first part of my morning routine. There's other things, there's other examples. There is, of course, the before work routine. So there's different things that might happen that may trigger you before then. So again, the first part of the routine is this gateway action item. And the reason I'm even bringing this up is because sometimes it's the hardest thing to do. And oftentimes we were strategic about how we made our routines, and we said, I'm going to do the hardest thing first. If the hardest thing for me in my PM routine is to clean the kitchen, then I'm going to just do that, bang it out right away. But at the end of the night, when we're tired and we have to clean the kitchen and we'd rather just, chill out and watch Netflix for a couple hours, it's much harder to get started, and it's much harder to get started on time. So again, there is some importance here, because the gateway action item, again, I don't choose to really talk about it too much, because it's not that much of a determining factor of the success of ritual design. It's whatever you want to do it, however you want to design this routine or the routines throughout your day. It doesn't really matter. But it is important now because, again, we're talking about the triggers that come before that can ultimately help us execute that first gateway action item. So today's going to be a very, very short episode because that's pretty much the concept that I wanted to present to you. And now what I'm going to do is give you some examples of triggers that can help us start this gateway action item or start each and every routine throughout a ritual design. So the AM routine, this is a big one, right? Because our body is transitioning from sleep to being fully awake, and that's a long process. Our brain waves are actually changing, our body's being adjusted to the sunlight and all this stuff. So that first thing that we set out to do in that morning routine may be very hard. For me, years ago, it used to be going to the gym the very first thing. Like that was the first thing I would do. And oftentimes I was fighting against my natural circadian rhythm. I remember when I was still teaching, for a month, I tried to wake up as early as 4:45 and have enough time to actually go to the gym. Didn't last long because I was waking up way too early for what my body was naturally intended to do. So eventually I found a little bit later of a sweet spot. But what was my trigger that helped me actually get to the gym, because that was my first gateway action item? Well, it was very simple. I mean, this is most people actually probably already know this, is that you leave your clothes, your gym clothes, out on the dresser or something already prepared, ready to go, folded nicely, because that's it. That's all I need. That's the only trigger that I need to, get me going. Now, there's a million, especially in the morning routine, there's a million different ways that we can set triggers for ourselves to start our routine. For me now, currently, what my trigger is to make sure that I have my planner set out in the living room downstairs on the couch, because that's the first place I'm going to be going. And my first part of my routine is doing my gratitude practice inside my planner. So the night before, I have to make sure that it's there, and I always put it there and ready because I was planning the day before, so it's already there, ready to go. But it's an important little trigger for me, and that obviously would fall under the location-based triggers, right? It's a location in my house that I'm setting something up, and it's more of an environment design, if you will. So that's my trigger. Again, we can go through a million different triggers for the morning routine. So let's take a look at the before work routine. The before work routine, we'll use an example here as a time-based trigger. So a time-based trigger very well may be two things. It may be as simple as saying to yourself and committing to, okay, 8:15 is when I start my before work routine, because I know I have to actually get in the car and leave to the office by 8:30. So I have 15 minutes to do whatever it is that you do. And then that before work routine may follow you through into when you get into the office. It may take a different form where you actually may implement something to help that time trigger, right? Because if you're telling yourself, especially in the beginning of this process, if you just say to yourself, I'm going to do this at this time, and there's nothing that's helping you along, you may feel unmotivated. You may forget what time it is. You may be distracted, whatever. So for instance, like something like that, I used to have Lady Alexa. Hope she didn't go off. She beeped. She used to remind me that I would have a certain amount of time to do XYZ. She actually still helps me with my PM routine in certain respects, but that may be something you want to set up, maybe, or if you have Google Home or something that can say something to you at a certain time that says, hey, now it's time to start your before work routine. Now that's powerful. That's contextual. You're hearing a voice tell you that you want to start this routine, and you can even label it as something motivational, like, get off your ass and start, whatever it is you want to do. But that's just an example with, using time-based triggers. So as we move on to the after-work routine, we'll use an example, say, as a location-based trigger. Now, a location-based trigger can be, again, say if we're driving home from somewhere. This can be, say, a home spot. Now, I'm not talking about the home spot when you were a kid and you would wake up from a long trip and just know that we're at that turn. I'm talking about just a home spot that okay, it's the Starbucks in the corner before I make a left. And that's kind of like where I know I'm like, all right, I'm basically home. Maybe that's your location trigger to start this, whatever your routine is, right? Maybe your after work routine can start while you're driving home, and it's simply a gratitude practice, and you're just you're not even writing anything down. You're just thinking through about how grateful for you are that you have the family that you have, the people in your life that you're about to go home, the kids that you have that you're about to help with homework, the parents you still have in your life, or whatever it may be, that you're just running that through your head. And then maybe the second part of the routine is, as soon as you pull into the driveway, you do a quick 2-minute breathing exercise before you even get out of the car. Do a little state change, kind of refuel, if you will, and be ready to go and leave that work baggage at work, and bring on the happy home life, if you will. And for the final routine, we'll talk about the PM routine, of course. And this, you can get crafty with this. And again, I'm just using examples. You can mix and match, and you can find whatever trigger works for you. But there may be kind of triggers that don't fall into the ones we've covered in the last couple of episodes. There may be some type of event-based trigger. So, for instance, if your trigger is when you're done eating dinner and then you finish cleaning the kitchen, right? That sparkling fresh kitchen ready to go because you're all set for the next morning. Maybe that event that you've just cleaned the kitchen is what tells you to start your PM routine. That's your trigger. Now, for me, it's kind of actually a little bit of that, and more so is that the timing of this works perfectly because as soon as I'm usually done finishing cleaning the kitchen, it is bedtime for the kiddo. So around 7:50, we go up and head up to Quinn's room. We do the whole little bedtime routine together. Mom and Dad, we read the story. It was very cute. And 8 o'clock, it's like clockwork. It's lights out, and we leave. And that's literally exactly when I start my PM routine. So that's my business block. I come down to the workshop here and put in a solid 2 hours, and then I do some other stuff that round out my PM routine. So that's my if you will, like an event-based type of trigger. Now, technically, it's a time-based trigger because it's at 8 o'clock, but the event that surrounds it that I know, and I've told myself, okay, after this is when I start my routine. This is a very, very powerful thing to think through. And you might even want to use, say, like the notes pages in the back of the planner, or you can write it down anywhere. It doesn't matter where you write it down. But you may even want to write down and really commit to what these triggers are going to be to help you start the specific routines. Because you may find that, man, I feel great every time I do my after work routine, but it's just so hard to do because there's so many distractions and this always keeps happening and that one needs me and you might just find yourself in a position that you haven't committed and or you haven't found the right trigger that works perfectly for you. The reason I said do a quick little breathing in my example, do a quick little breathing exercise in the car is because that's still your little safe haven, right? Half the time, no one even knows that you've come home yet. But it's your moment to do what you need to do, and you're going to be the only person that's going to be holding you back is yourself. So it's not, again, you're taking a look at the most effective ways to find the trigger that works for you and implement it to help you start and be consistent with your routines. So that's it for today. That's our episode, and that is a really short and sweet one, but I think it rounds out our conversation around triggers really well. It's really triggers in action, right? It's what it makes this work, and it's what actually ties this back to ritual design, because we can be triggered in a lot of negative ways, but how do we use them positively, and how do we use them to actually work for ourselves inside our daily ritual design? So thank you so much for being here. If you liked this episode, please hit the like button. Actually share it with somebody who thinks may benefit from it. Hit the bell notification and subscribe, of course. And I will see you next week here on the Upgrade My Rituals podcast.